Hi guys, Olive here today to show you the latest books that I have acquired. I've not been doing quite as much book shopping as I normally would this time of year, but I did pick up some books when I was briefly helping out at my favorite local used bookstore, and I've definitely placed some orders with Better World Books. I have a mix of fiction and nonfiction to show you in today's book haul, and we will start off with The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street by Helene Hanff. 84 Charing Cross Road was one of my favorite nonfiction books of last year, and ever since I started raving about that book here on my channel, I've had people on my case in the comment section demanding that I read this book, which is the sequel, in which the author finally makes her way across the pond to meet her correspondence of 20 years. This one sounds delightful. And then when I was doing my brief stint at the bookstore a few months back, I found another one of her books, Apple of My Eye. This is essentially her love letter to New York City. I might not be the biggest fan of New York City, but I still think I'm really gonna like this one. The next one I'm going to show you is yet another one I found when I was working at the bookstore. Working there was not good for the health of my TBR, but that book is The Hare with Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal. This is a memoir / detective story. The author of this book is a ceramicist, and he inherited 264 of these little Japanese ivory and wood carvings. He decided to look into the history of these little things that he had inherited because he wanted to know their story. Who made them? Who all owned them before him, and how did they survive long enough to come into his possession? Simultaneously, this book is also a story of his own family, who were once very wealthy but then had a decline in status. This one sounded far too cool to pass up, so I used some of my store credit on it. At the last library book sale I was able to go to before quarantine started, I picked up Brain on Fire, My Month of Madness by Susanna Cahalan. I am so late to the party on this one. I feel like this is a nonfiction book that basically everyone has already read, and I still need to read it. If you've not heard about this book, it is about how the author at age 24 was hospitalized for what looked like a psychotic break, but she was completely normal up until this point. She eventually did get a diagnosis. There was something going on with her brain, but she only just barely got that diagnosis. This one is pretty universally beloved, so I really need to get to it. Then I picked up another memoir called Reckless Years, A Diary of Love and Madness by Heather Chaplin. This is the author's story of having a several years long downward spiral shortly after she had left a dissatisfying marriage in which she had felt trapped for nearly a decade. The last memoir I have to show you in this haul is Wish I Could Be There, Notes from a Phobic Life by Alan Shawn. This is the memoir of a man with a number of different phobias. Not only does he talk about living with those phobias in this book, but it seems like he also does some digging into the origins and into the nature of those phobias that he has, so it seems like this book is going to have a psychology element to it as well. Moving into the more general nonfiction, I also picked up A Mad Love, An Introduction to Opera by Vivian Schweitzer. In a nonfiction haul I did earlier this year, I showed off a big, intimidating book on opera that I had picked up shortly before making that video, but in that video I admitted that I was scared of that book because I am a complete neophyte when it comes to opera. One of my lovely commenters was kind enough to let me know about this book, which they said was a much better introduction to opera. It's even part of the subtitle. I very much appreciate you looking out for me. I will start here instead. Then I picked up A Natural History of Love by Diane Ackerman. Her other book, arguably her most famous book, A Natural History of the Senses, is on my book menu for July, but this book is all about the historical, cultural, religious, biological, and physical aspects of the crazy little thing we call love. Then I picked up a very Pittsburgh book. It's called In Good Company, 125 Years at the Heinz Table by Eleanor Foa Dienstag. This is the story of the H.J. Heinz Company, famous for making tomato ketchup. They were founded here in Pittsburgh in the late 19th century. I definitely want to read this one because I'm always looking to add to my historical and cultural knowledge of the city in which I live. We'll just ignore the fact that I am actually allergic to tomatoes. This wouldn't be one of my book hauls if there weren't at least one book on nature in it, and there are actually a few of them in this haul. The first of those is called When the Last Lion Roars by Sarah Evans. This book is about the rise and fall of lions as a species. I know the story of Cecil is told in here. If you don't know who I mean, he was a very famous lion in Zimbabwe who was illegally killed by a big game hunter. I know that's going to be very difficult reading for me, but it's definitely part of the grander story about lions as a species in our modern world. I also bought The Missing Links by Ross Barnett. Before I tell you what this book is about, let me just say I am living for the pun in this title. But this is a book all about animals in Britain that have been lost over time. He investigates why some have survived while other ones have died off. The third and final nature book in this haul is Kingdom Under Glass by J. Kirk. This is another work of nonfiction. It tells the story of a renowned taxidermist and his young wife as they traveled to Africa as the Gilded Age was drawing to a close. They were looking to preserve the world's great beasts, and so they traveled with hunters. I imagine I'm going to have some mixed feelings about this one, but I still think it's important to read. I also do have a handful of fiction books I would like to show you in this haul. The first one I'm going to show you is one I ordered pretty much right as quarantine was starting. I saw it on a recommendations list and ordered it immediately. It's called Wise Children by Angela Carter. From everything I read about this book, it seems to be a comic novel about the tangled fortunes of two theatrical families. I enjoyed The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill so much earlier this year, and I have been really interested to pick up anything that gives me a similar vibe, and this one does just that. Another book I got in the beginning of the quarantine period was American Spy by Lauren Wilkinson. This was actually part of a small business box that I ordered. This is about a young Black woman who is working as an intelligence officer with the FBI in 1986, so during the Cold War. She is tasked with helping to take down a revolutionary leader with a communist ideology. I picked up this next book, which is actually the first book in a trilogy, because Amy from Amy Poole really enjoyed it, and we tend to have very similar taste in fiction. That book is The Mapmaker's War by Ronlyn Domingue. This start to the trilogy tells the story of a young woman apprenticed to a mapmaker in charge of charting the entire domain. As she begins to travel around to help her master with that task, she runs into a secretive but peaceful people who are in possession of great wealth. Well, when she reports their existence, when she gets back home, things begin to go awry. I'm really interested to see how much I end up enjoying this one, hopefully enough to continue on with the trilogy. I also picked up The Buccaneers by Edith Wharton. If you've been watching my channel regularly over the past maybe 2 years or so, you will probably know that I have been falling head over heels in love with Edith Wharton, and I'm trying to acquire basically everything written by her or about her. This was her last novel, and it is about 5 wealthy girls in Golden Age New York City who are denied entry into high society because their money is too new. So they travel to London to marry their way into titles instead. As I said, this was Edith Wharton's last novel, but what I left out just then was that it was unfinished when she died in 1937. It was actually published in 1938 in its unfinished version, but then in 1993, for some reason, a different writer completed the book for her, and that completed version, the one I have right here, was not very well received. So we will see what I end up thinking about it. And then the last book I have to show you in this haul is another one that deals with Edith Wharton. It is The Collected Stories of Edith Wharton. This is yet another one I found when I was working at the bookstore. I could not pass this one up. This book contains 28 of Edith Wharton's short stories. I'm thinking I might wait to read any of these until I have finished reading all of her novels and novellas. But if anyone out there watching this video thinks that any of the stories in this collection are worth reading earlier than that, please do let me know in the comment section below. I can be convinced. So those are all the books that I've picked up recently. I would love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you've heard of any of them, or if you're now interested in reading them after seeing them in this video. You can put that or any other more general comments or questions you may have down in the comment section below. But if you'd prefer to connect with me somewhere other than YouTube, I am on a variety of different places on social media, and the links to all of my profiles will be in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.